In an EU member state not particularly known for sunshine, one of the largest solar energy power stations in the world is being built. It's in Germany, about 200 kilometres south of Berlin. This 40-megawatt power station should go online within 2 years. Meteorologists say the area is sunny because of the local topography. But it's not the only reason that the company chose East Germany.
You don't find such large open areas in West Germany. Here we've got an area of 200 hectares, of which we're using 110. So that's one reason. The other reason is that we had a great deal of political support, and also support from the local people. So a lot of doors were open to us. People were happy that an investor came here, one that keeps its promises, and that jobs were created, and this space, which has been abandoned for almost 17 years, was being used.
Under the communist regime, this was a military airfield. Even though the solar power station will need only a few people to run it, construction has created between 70 and 100 jobs. After 2 years in operation, the plant will have produced the same amount of energy that was used in building it. By 2020, the EU wants 20% of all energy consumption to come from renewable sources like solar. Within the same time frame, the EU is aiming to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 20% and make energy savings of 20%. But there's a problem. The EU also wants economic growth and more jobs. With the Lisbon strategy, it set itself the goal of one day becoming the world's leading economy. Europe's politicians also hold contradictory views.
To achieve growth, we must say yes to industrial production. We must say yes to the use of areas for that. We must say yes to increased transportation and people being able to move around more. But if we adopt this really hysterical climate policy, as is happening now, there's a danger that it'll go forward without thought to the costs in areas like lost jobs. And I believe that I have a responsibility to do what's necessary so that young people in Europe can work in industry in the future. More trucks, more regional airports, that doesn't fit in with fighting climate change. On the other hand, we must invest more in railways, in green cities, in better cars, in renewable energy. That's to say, we would have other technologies which could, in the end, create even more jobs than the existing technologies.
So that the single market flourishes and poorer regions prosper, the EU's spending money to improve transport infrastructure, but that means pollution. Currently, transport alone creates approximately 30% of Europe's greenhouse gas emissions. Already long-time EU member states and those who joined more recently are clashing over those emissions. Newer members insist they need to catch up. And in addition, traditionally, they've used more coal to generate energy. European Deputy Adam Gierek says 2020 is too soon.
It will be very difficult for them to transform their energy policies towards less CO2 emissions within such a short time. And for that reason, I think that unless there's additional assistance from other EU members, it won't be possible before 2020 to establish a policy for reducing CO2 emissions.
To boost employment opportunities in Europe, the EU says the workforce has to be mobile, but that too creates more pollution. Already today, air transport is responsible for 3% of greenhouse gas emissions, and the European Commission says in the future it could become the #1 source of such emissions. Recently, the Commission announced major subsidies for research into making aviation technology greener. European politicians and their support staff are also particularly mobile. Once a month, they shuttle back and forth between 2 work centres, Brussels and Strasbourg. According to a study carried out by the Greens, that creates 20 to 30,000 tonnes of CO2 each year. It's not the only example of waste by European institutions, as this Green Party deputy explained.
Here we are in the basement of the European Parliament. You see there are a few bicycles here. On the other hand, the Parliament has a giant car park. It would be better to have more bicycles. The deputies or staff at the Parliament mostly have to travel no more than 2 or 3 kilometres every day. Normally a bicycle would be sufficient, unless it's raining heavily. When we travel around in these big limousines, people really don't take us seriously when we say that there's a need to make more fuel-efficient cars in Europe.
8:30 p.m. at the Parliament building. The day's business is long finished, but the lights and electrical appliances remain on. Will the EU one day be able to reconcile its policies on climate change and economic growth? Yes, according to Claudia Kempfert, a member of the group of experts advising European Commission President José Manuel Barroso.
I think that one can have both. The development of renewable energies can give a really incredible boost to growth. Compared with other nations in the world, there'll be good effects on employment and on the potential for growth. And that doesn't contradict the growth targets of the Lisbon strategy. The mobility objectives are also important, and it's important that we create new transportation technologies, engines that don't produce CO2, which will mean continued mobility in the future, along with anti-climate change measures. But in this area, not enough has been done. Those technologies don't exist yet.
The process is underway at the European Parliament. A new commission has been set up to look for solutions. Will it be helpful in terms of climate change? Herbert Reul is sceptical.
I'd really like this to be looked at more closely because scientists hold very different positions on the question of what is caused by CO2 and what comes from other factors. And then perhaps we'll think again and ask whether it is really the right thing to put all these resources into the fight against CO2. It may be that all that is having a limited effect.
In Potsdam in Germany, for the last 100 years, scientists have continuously measured the temperature. One climatologist says the rises seen since the 1970s are mainly caused by human activities. Even though methane and water vapour are greater contributors to climate change, he says CO2 remains one of the principal factors.
If we reduce CO2, at least the temperature increases would slow down, and then we can think about strategies on how to adapt, how to react to a rise in temperature of 2 degrees over the next 50 years in Germany.
His colleague insists the EU's proposed 20% reduction is still too little to slow down the anticipated rise of 2 degrees.
The EU has said it would like a 30% reduction if it could get other countries to collaborate. I think that 30% is a more realistic figure to reach the goal of 2 degrees. In any case, we must show that we're able to separate the economic growth and prosperity issue from increasing emissions, because otherwise other major countries like China or India won't take part in fighting climate change. So we have to take the lead.
Is human activity having an impact on the climate, and how? That is the subject of much debate. Can the EU attain the economic growth it desires at the same time? That's an even bigger question.